got to do it. Fuck love, I can't believe it's going somewhere.
Not because of us.
Nah.
Blah, 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 blah. How is your... How much gusto are you feeling right now?
I can give gusto.
I can give gusto.
You want gusto?
No, so I was just going to one level higher gusto than whatever you were going to do.
Okay, you can do it. No, let's do it.
Gusto!
Gusto.
All right, cool. Fire away.
Thank you. Welcome to CDR, where we give our very unprofessional opinion in the album we have been listening to all week. The man that knows nothing about music, myself, Bryn, and the man who knows slightly more than me, Matthew.
Hey.
A lot more than me. This week we've been listening to Nowhere Generation, the 9th album of the Chicago punk band Rise Against. Formed in 1999, originally under the name of Transistor Revolt, where they released an EP self-titled. They were joined to a label owned by Fat Mick. Yeah, Fat Mick from NoFX.
Yeah, cool.
Toured with them during the time. Name was changed. For their third album, they joined to DreamWorks Recording. I know, surprising. But during the third album, they were bought out by Universal and then merged with Geffen. And for some reason, they were just kind of in this weird spot between labels and being allowed to do whatever they did. But at that time, they produced a very polished album, which was Siren Songs of the Counterculture. Before this album, they were very much an underground band, not really making it into any of the charts or mainstream at all. But this is the album that brought pretty much the biggest songs that the song that everyone grew to know and love was either Give It All or Swing Life Away.
Yeah, Give It All was the one that got me to recognize Rise Against.
I hated Swing Life Away.
Yeah, it's not that great a track, but I get why people like it.
I understand why people like it. It does, like, they always know how to somehow hit people right in the feels that need to be heard. But Give It All, I first heard playing Underground Need for Speed 2.
Yep.
By far one of the, my top 10 best games I've ever played. I've played it repeated 4 or 5 times.
You know, I probably first heard it on a Flash game online, right?
Yep.
It would have been the backing track to some just time-wasting activity. And I was like, this song's pretty cool. I should probably look it up. You know, this guy's busting his lungs trying to sing this song.
Yeah, just full on screaming. And what was it? The film clip was them all on a train just just going for it.
Yeah, sick.
Yeah, it's awesome. They're very political, environmental, animal rights, trying to make a difference everywhere they go, trying to give people the awareness, but more along the line of question everything and do your own research. Done tours with Foo Fighters, Gaslight Anthem, Mariachi, El Bronx, just to name a few. They worked this time with Bill Stevens, who has produced with them 5 times in the past, and that really brings out the rawness that they have in their tracks. Mm-hmm. And they're pretty consistent with bringing out albums every 2 to 3 years. I mean, the last album they brought out, which is one of my favorite, is a complete stripped-back acoustic Ghost Note Symphonies Volume 1, and please bring out a fucking second one. I think I love Rise Against. One of my best friends absolutely loves Rise Against, and when he plays around his house, his wife's just like, your daddy's playing stupid music again. Put this album on and just fucking flip their switch, and it made things a little bit better. Pretty much in this album is just all Rise Against, everything. You're not going to be surprised by absolutely nothing. All the lyrics were written before the pandemic, but since the pandemic has happened, I think that brings just a little bit more flame to the fire of the lyrics. Just makes it more relatable, I guess, along the way. 41 and a half minutes.
Right.
Matthew, how was your week?
Well, ignoring my week, when are we getting the Rise Against Shrek mix up? As soon as you mentioned, DreamWorks and Universal, I'm like, bloody hell.
I know.
Who can we mix Rise Against with, and what sort of abomination?
Oh, that was a very short one. Like, from there, I think they've gone through another 2 or 3 records, and like after that, if you're on this 9th one, I don't want to go through the full history.
Could you imagine like a Rise Against song with like Cameron Diaz as backing vocals? Anyway,
it'd be sick.
It would be sick.
Any song you put in a Disney movie would be pretty epic. I can just imagine like little trolls and gnomes just busting out to Surrender or...
I can't remember if it's Pixar or not,
Savior.
but I'm thinking like Wreck-It Ralph would have been sick if they had like, sponsored Rise Against content throughout. And anyway,
we're way off top here. Let's get back to this. Yeah, your week is...
The week with the album was equal parts entertaining and frustrating, I think. The music stylings of Rise Against naturally sit well with me. It's a genre that I'm very familiar with and have listened to for quite a while. I probably haven't been Rise Against's biggest fan, not because I've disliked them, but just because it's sort of been maybe just off the beaten path a tiny bit in terms of what I'd been listening to. But I knew their bigger songs, obviously, and Savior has to go into that conversation as their best song. Give It All was great, but I think Savior's their best track, and so I'm always keen to give them a go. The problem is for everything that they do well, I don't think they veer enough away from what they do well to sort of keep your attention all the way through if this isn't a genre of music that you are in love with to start. So I can very happily sit through and listen to this track by track, no problem. But then when I sit back in the cold light today, I go, what was the difference between these tracks, this track? Not a lot, really. No. So that's sort of where I felt. I conflicted. I enjoyed my week with it, but I sort of felt I didn't really learn anything or grow or there wasn't any of this like, wow, that was such a cool, neat idea. It was sort of just like I was eating fast food through the week. Satisfying at the time, but sort of doesn't really nourish you.
Fair enough. It's like a water with a little bit of lemon in it.
I'd rather the fast food analogy. At least I can imagine myself eating a big greasy burger.
It's true. It's always satisfying.
How was your week?
I chose the album because I needed somewhat of a break from everything else and land on something I know I'm going to enjoy in the end. Maybe coming into a full blast of just hearing it over and over again throughout the week may have been just drowned a little bit much, and I do need a bit of fresh air. Something new and different would be great coming for the week ahead, Matthew. I generally want to be surprised by Rise Against, more that I want to feel a connection to the power and the feelings and just this message that they want to get across. And sometimes, most of the times, you'll find it in Rise Against, and especially in this album, someone's going to find their song, like an anthem album. And this album's a lot of anthem songs, depending on the person who it connects to. They're all somewhat different from, talking about Nowhere Generation is really talking about the younger generations who feel like they're going to be lost and not heard. And a lot of them living under the biggest debt that's ever happened in history, and to student loan debt, going through politicians, environmental reasons. You kind of get an insight to what they're seeing in the world.
But what you were saying is none of the tracks particularly pulled you by the scruff of the neck. So
no, I know what I'm listening to.
Yeah, so the tracks can have their underlying meaning, but I'm guessing none of them were like, just smacked you over the head. This is just an absolute banger.
No, none of them smacked me over the head. Absolute banger. I think the biggest one that kind of pulled at my feels is Forfeit.
Yeah, I tend to think Forfeit's probably the best track on the album, and I hate to say that in an album of high energy that the acoustic track is the standout track, but it's the one that I think so deviates. Sweet. Well, it deviates most from the formula, and when on repeated listens, that ends up being something that I kind of crave listening for. So I agree with you.
It's the almost like the whipped cream or cherry. That's just a slightly different flavor, but it's your favorite part.
Sure. Yeah, and then the rest is sort of the sponge cake.
Yep. Mud cake.
I suppose we should probably have a go through some of these tracks. Are there any other tracks before we sort of go through the set list that really stood out for you at all?
Not unless we're talking about lyric-wise, the stories and the meanings behind them. I mean, Rise Against generally have this flow and sound that they really like to stick to. There's always a pick being dragged up the main guitar, just to create a little bit of suspense before he blows into the chorus or a particular point where he wants you to almost surge with fire. And there are other parts where it just everything cuts back half a volume and he's just got to give this meaning across before he blasts out the next part.
I think it's important to note that the production values are awesome, and I think the light and shade with which the singer plays within the confines of the songs is very, very good.
Yeah.
The problem is that it's been that way forever. He's always been very, very good, and the production values have always generally been pretty good on Rise Against albums. It's just wanting him to do something different, or the band do something just a little bit different.
I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, but I mean, you leave bread out on the bench. You know, it's not broken, but it gets stale pretty quick.
Yep. I kind of see it as if they just keep doing what they're doing and they do hit people where they most feel it, they can always go through their back catalogue and listen to and find what they, are more drawn to.
So I tend to disagree. I really dislike it when artists don't show some level of progression album to album, some adding new
almost
bows.
like maturing.
Either maturing or adding something to their sound, to their dynamic over time. You don't want to throw out what it is to be Rise Against, but you want to incorporate other elements to keep it fresh. It doesn't need to be hugely different. It just needs to be enough to hold the interest. And so like that ends up being my main critique of the album.
Yep.
It is the fact that it's hard to differentiate songs. There's sort of 4 tracks on the album for mine that I think do enough to separate from the others, and then the others are just like this one coagulated mess of 30 odd minutes.
Okay, maybe we should stick with those ones then.
Sure.
Really, since there's so many that just really do blend into each other.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. There's not much difference, not even between the drumming or the guitar. It's all set out and played exactly the same, like rinse and repeat. This is how it's going to go step by step.
There are the odd cool riffs, really big uplifting
I'm not saying that
parts.
they're not artistic and pull out like awesome shit. I mean, like the drums, you can tell going from one side to the other and really just sticking in that one spot before they fucking go smack it again.
Yeah. You're right in saying that they've honed their punk aesthetic almost to too fine a point, and I guess that ends up being what we're saying. So in terms of the tracks that I particularly liked, I liked Nowhere Generation.
Yep.
Ignoring the fact that it's super duper cringy at the start, I think the lightness with which the verse riff plays and the crispness of the drums, I think make up for it, and I think it ends up being a fairly good song after you sort of go, oh, we're the Nowhere Generation. Even though it's the album title, you sort of just like, ugh.
I think it's not our generation.
Yeah, but how old's the Rise Against dude, right?
Oh, good question.
You can't I don't think it's an unfair thing to say it's a bit cringy. The message is a little bit tropey potentially.
I would say that it's probably come from talking to his fans and getting in touch with them and finding out what they are most worried about for their future.
Potentially, but it doesn't. That message doesn't necessarily resonate readily.
But it doesn't resonate for you, but it could for others.
Well, the shocking thing being that I particularly like the music in this track. It's just, I just have to go, ugh. I wish you'd chosen maybe some more interesting wordplay or something a little less obvious to lead in with the song. But the rest of the song's great. Obviously, we've spoken about Forfeit.
Yeah, Forfeit. Bringing in violins and almost a cello. There's like the little part of piano in the background. Like they just keep popping up here and there.
Yeah.
Just pique the ears a little bit.
I think this is the song that they have the most interesting ideas.
Yep.
Ignoring the fact that it's an acoustic track, I think they do this one interesting thing in the verses where they have this chord that sort of sticks out as not quite right, but in a good way, really interesting. I think the vocal lines they bend in a weird, in an interesting way, especially in that first phrasing that I actually really quite like. And then they hit with that cello and the down-tuned acoustic guitar at the start of the chorus to really give it that thun, that real thudding acoustic sound that I think really does the track wonders. Yeah, it's a very pleasant listen.
It is very pleasant. When I first heard this song, I was like, this is going to be the part where the band goes off to have a drink because they've been sweating it out, balls deep, going hardcore, and lead singer Tim just like pulls out the acoustic guitar, and I will play for 3 or 4 songs that are always crowd favorites, and this will be in there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is definitely our first thing I wrote down was this is going to be a crowd pleaser for sure.
Yep.
And it's going to have everyone just wallowing and crying and screaming back the lyrics to him almost as a joint harmony. Hopefully, you can all sound pretty good.
You get enough people together, they sound well enough, I suppose.
There's actually quite a few backing singers in this too. I think there's somewhere up to 15.
I mean, it gives you that rich sound, hey?
Yeah.
Like, you get more people in. Chuck them all in a recording studio. Who cares? Blah, 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 blah. Sing, 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 sing. And you get that nice, crisp sound. My very little time spent in, like, doing production, it's amazing the quality of the sound that you get that changes once you go from, like, 1 person to 4 people to 15 people to 100 people. I never had 100 people, but...
That sounds like a choir.
No, but... there's like the imperfections of the people over the course of 100 different people actually iron out, and you get like this real full sound. Anyway, we're way off topic.
It's just a one person who just pierces through every time.
I mean, there is. I mean, if you sing in like super duper flat, you need a super duper large group of people to wash you out.
Sweet. Where else would you like to? I kind of Numbers was one of my faves after
The intro track.
Yeah, I really want to know what this old timey wimey song that they play at the start, almost like a patriotic. We're marching off to war.
It gave me like American national anthem vibes without it being that.
Yes.
Yeah. I quite like it, and I'm always a fan of like these little sounds just before the music punches you in the face.
Yep.
It's like there's like a little tick,
that
tick,
little
and then it's like, here comes the fist.
They always do like bringing in the guitar. Just it's not loud, but it's just so crisp and clean that it also when it goes through its 4 bars, it just gives that little like time to go, and then you do get punched in the face. Everyone just decides to go fuck a full boom.
Yeah, almost like loading a pistol, really.
The drums just in this whole album, I just cut away from the song, I heard more from the drums than I did from the guitar. It's almost like the guitar is just slowly pulled way into the background, even though he's doing really cool things. He's got amazing riffs and doing these funny little melodies in the background, but he's just not getting like the full frontal stage, whereas I hear more from the funky bass, and the drums are just really powering through.
I don't think the guitarist has done enough on the album to offer us enough great riffs. There are good riffs on this album. There are good chord progressions. There are points of interest. I don't think there are enough.
Yep.
And the drummer has to work his ass off because he's in a punk band. He made his choices.
Oh, yeah, he knew what was coming. He's been in it for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the other good tracks are actually towards the end. So you got Sooner or Later.
Sooner or Later, yep.
I really, really like the breakdown riff. As I shit on the guitarist, I then say, oh, yeah, here's a good riff. It's really punchy. It's a point of difference on the album. I've got it as like an album highlight, literally that part. I think the softer intro bit of bass, sort of mixing into more interesting chord flavors. I think this song does well. And then the very next song, Middle of a Dream, I think is where they get all of the punk aesthetics so right as to overcome the sense of cliche you might get listening to it. I think this song punches hard. It just feels like pop punk at its best. Some of the riffs really give me that Offspring vibe, as I was telling you earlier. And I love a really good "Hey" gang vocal.
Hey, hey, hey! Repeating chants is what I wrote against so many of them. I mean, Broken Dreams Inc.
Yeah. Broken Dreams Incorporated.
Broken Dreams. Like there's another rise against just
truism.
Yeah, right there. Exactly that. Being a song about big companies pissing off workers because they need to save money doing the automated machines, and then what is everyone else meant to do? I mean, it kind of opens that song kind of opens the eyes, like, yeah, they're working towards automated. You may need to look at somehow upping your skills to be a part of this ever-growing industry and changing. It's never, I don't think they're really ever bashing on a lot of people except for maybe the Monarch. But I think a lot of it is just like you need to wake up and sort of educate yourself and be prepared to prepare yourself for the future. Where you go to, which one's the one where sooner or later is the one where you need to come back to the things you've done, the consequences you've paid, not just keep burning bridges and get to shore and burn the boat because you're never going home.
Well, what's the lyric? Sooner or later comes a time when we reap what we have sown.
I mean, straight into it.
Quintessential Rise Against lyric.
Yeah, I mean, anyone would really throw that in, reap what you sow. It's like, it's just a common phrase, really.
Yeah, I think it works on this track, though.
Yeah. A lot of songs I do think blend into each other with the same meaning as well, coming back and forth, and you do get hints of that when you read the lyrics.
Yeah, what track sort of stood out lyrically to you?
Well, besides Forfeit, Broken Dreams Inc., Talking to Ourselves.
Okay.
Which I thought was really good. It's like you're trying to wake people up, but no one's listening to you. It's almost like you have no voice. And then when you do catch their attention, you go, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you."
Yeah.
And it's like it's never a win-win situation where you feel like you're going to come out good, but you're always going to upset someone. And you're like, who gives a fuck? People are going to get upset. The dandelions. Which is, there's another thing. Dandelions in the guns, silencing rifles. Like, I don't think that really worked in the past.
Suppose not.
Numbers, they got the power, we got the numbers. It really is a true illusion to let the elites think that that they really have complete control, but really they rely on us more than we really need to rely on them.
That was a good use of the lyrics in the song to explain the meaning. I like it.
Thank you.
10 out of 10.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What else
I've thrown you off hard now.
You did. Sudden Urge is just really being frustrated with the system. This is the one where it's like, you would like to try and fix the system, but this is the day where you go, fuck it, let's just burn everything down. Like, these all have, like, every song has lyrics in that I can love at some stage.
This felt like, this song really felt like the most tropey of all the Rise Against tracks. Like, the lyric choices really feel like they're just, grabbed from other activist tracks that they've had over their discography. Yep. But it has a really cool breakdown riff, so I let it off with a pass mark.
You let it
slide?
Yeah. I kind of got it, like, there's a lot of blending mess in it, I found.
Yeah, when you have a very similar aesthetic throughout the album, it can be very difficult to differentiate between the tracks. That is another critique as well. You can sit and play and you wouldn't know what track is what unless you are particularly familiar with the album.
Mm-mm.
I have a bone to pick with you regarding the final track. Was it good? Just the name of it is Rules of Play.
Yeah, I know that. I did write down this, and it sounds a bit like POD. We're from school heart. It's just got that sort of same riff at the start that I felt that. The end of the last track, as Matt says, Rules of Play, the lyrics came across as, I've said what I've needed to say. I'm not going to push my agenda, but you need to decide for yourself what you want to do with what I have given you. It's always up to you. Stop relying on other people. That's it. And I feel like that is a kind of a good way to end an album when you've already been fucking saying so much for so many different subjects over the time. The last one is be like, maybe just rethink.
Yeah, you don't always be so certain. You can't always be right.
Yeah, there's always two sides in the story. You never know if what you do good is actually the good thing to do.
Was it a good track?
I say no. Look, musically, no, it's just the same as all the others.
Yep. So,
you were looking for what, some sort of crescendo towards the end?
Some sort of crescendo.
That would have been sick. That would have been sick. Just like, yeah, you're right. You were saying before, like a 6 or 7 minute, just epic, just full epic.
And this is the other thing too. I'm sort of starved for something real left of center when it comes to Rise Against through the listening of the album. Imagine one of two things. Yeah, a prog epic. I nearly knocked my cord out. Imagine a prog epic. Yeah, 7-minute track, but it really grabs you by the scruff of the neck and it drags you from section to section aggressively, and it gives you that lull before really punching you in the face with like just the most epic final minute you could imagine. That'd be sick.
Or even doing it in the middle of the album.
Well, anywhere on the album, right? If you've put enough variety into the track list, then you can earn the right to have just a standard song as the last track, right? Because then it would be a point of difference. A standard track, well, everything else is non-standard. We need something that we can hold our hands onto. The other thing that I would have loved to have seen was, imagine Rise Against's most aggressive track. Like just the meanest, most uncompromising riffs, like the raspiness, like the raspy voice that he has, just dialing it up to 11, just going like to
ballistic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just spraying everything.
Yeah. It would be cool to have some point of difference, and unfortunately this track doesn't offer that in the music. I do take the point that it probably thematically fits as the final track on the album, based on the fact that, you know, I have all these opinions for the entire album, but then the last song is like, hey, yeah, but you might be wrong. Which I like as an exclamation point, because, you know, no one's so certain. No one should be so certain that they're right. You know, we make mistakes.
No, if people think they are right, they're most likely wrong.
Yeah. Anyway.
Shall we end?
I think so.
I think we do need to. There's awfully not a lot we can say about a Rise Against album that's not already known from all their previous
albums.
If
you like Rise Against, you'll like this. If you don't, you won't. Simple as that.
As simple as that. But this is what you would aim for this is the center of rock.
Yeah, I would say this is a nice marriage between rock aesthetics and like out and out punk, with some flirting of pop punk at certain spots on the album.
Very, very close. It's not like they had a whole song that was full.
No, they're flirting from across the room. It's just like, hey,
I think the closest thing you come to pop would be Nowhere Generation.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know what it is about the start that just made me go, I don't just like...
I skipped a track.
I really wanted to skip it.
It's the cringiness, dude. Anyway.
It's like, the wrong kind of chanting.
Okay. If people have a predilection for rock and they haven't really given punk a go, I think this album would be a great gateway drug to the punk scene. This album would stand on its own if it were the only album in the discography. Unfortunately for you and I, we know about all the other albums.
We do know about them all. Yes.
Anyway, I think people get it.
Yeah. It's Rise Against. If you've never heard it, give it a crack. Actually, I probably wouldn't even suggest this to be the album to go listen to.
What one would you suggest for someone who has never listened to Rise Against but might, you know, they're punk curious?
Appeal to Reason.
The early one.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Wolves is good. Endgame is good if you're super patriotic, American patriotic.
There's good tracks on it.
Yeah, Black Market's pretty good. I mean, like any of the previous albums are pretty good.
Do you want to score it?
No. I suggest listen to it. That's it.
What's my score?
6.5.
Probably going to give it a 6. It is a good album to listen to, but it is bereft of ideas. But what they do well.
Yep. Of course. Nailed it again.
Yeah, close enough.
Check it out. Give it a listen. Let us know what you think. Drop some interesting facts. I mean, there's who they are, and they're very, activists in the world, even working with WWF and Sea Shepherds. I'm sure there's a lot of fun facts about these guys. Oh, they're also straight edge.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I forget that every time I think of Rise Against. Like, oh wait, they don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, how do you think his voice survives all the touring?
Yeah, so much touring,
dude.
Okay.
Proof's in the pudding. Anytime that you have someone with a voice like that, you're like, oh well, they can't be drinking piss. It's just not possible.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Anyway.
Definitely giving it up. All right. Next week album.
I mean, you're probably as likely to guess what next week's album is.
Has it got butterflies?
It might have butterflies. There might
3,000?
There might be 3,000.
It might be 3,000 butterflies. Well, I wonder who's brought out another fucking album this year.
The 18th.
Yes, their 18th album in less than a decade.
Yeah, it's a King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and we're doing it. We have to listen to them.
We do have to listen to it. I wonder if they're going to hit 20 by the end of the year.
They might. I wonder if we're contractually obligated to listen to them all again.
Oh.
Anyway, that's the album.
Look, we're City. Let us know your comments. We'll catch you next week. Later, guys.
Ciao.
Ciao, motherfuckers.
We got to put it on.
Yeah, we do. We have to listen to this. So.
Oh, man. Fuck. Because life is a game I don't want to play.